Shalom, and welcome to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. This is a recording of a Shabbat teaching with Rabbinic Intern, Adrian Marcos.
For those of you who have never seen me or heard my voice before, I am the Rabbinic Intern, Adrian Marcos. And today I'm going to be talking about the parsha we just read, 10, 15 minutes ago. But in order for me to really talk about the meat and potatoes and make the points that I want to make, we're going to have to jump back a bit in Torah, and by a bit I mean all the way back to the beginning, kind of, because there's a lot of crossover between this parsha and some previous parshiot, and we need to set the ground stage. So who wants to read the first source? You can do it in Hebrew or in English, but if you do the Hebrew, then you have to read the English. Joey, okay.
Vayitzer Hashem Elokim et ha'adam afar min ha'adama vayipach be'apav nishmat chaim vayhi ha'adam u'nefesh chaya. The eternal God formed a human from the soul's humus, blowing into his nostrils the breath of life. The human became a living being.
Thank you, Joey. Now, for those of you who have a source sheet in front of you, you'll notice in italics it says that the Targum Onkelos translates this last line as, and the man became a speaking being, which tells us that Onkelos and others who spoke Aramaic had this understanding that speech and life were connected, right? And we see this connection again in the Siddur. Now, it says that this passage, which is our second source, is from the Ashkenazi Nusach. It appears in Nusach Sfard, which is the Hasidic Nusach. It also appears in the Sephardic Nusach. Sephardi, both Western and Eastern. And there's a lot of juicy stuff in here, but I want to focus on the first line and the last line. And I'll read this source just because we're bouncing around a bit. It opens with asking Hashem to guard our tongues from evil and our lips from speaking deceitfully. And then ends with, may the words of our mouths and the thoughts of our hearts be acceptable to Hashem. With the fact that we are making this request of Hashem at the very end of the Amidah, it's first off, this particular passage is it's a supplicatory personal prayer. You don't have to say it when you're reading it. When you see it in the Siddur, you could replace it with whatever you want. But I've always seen it as a rather powerful chatima, a rather powerful seal to end off the Amidah, because the Amidah is, it's a prayer that acknowledges God's power, and depending on if you're saying it during the week or if you're saying it on Shabbat, it's asking for blessings for any number of things. But this ending, I think, reinforces the power that our speech is having, right? Guard my tongue from evil and my lips from speaking deceitfully tells us as readers that there is enough power in our speech that we need to have guardrails. And we need to have reminders that we shouldn't be speaking nastily about people or speaking curses about people. Because also, the very next line in the English says, may my soul be unresponsive to those who curse me. Asking for protection from others who might be speaking badly about you, because those words can have, at least in the eyes of the prayer book and the people who codified prayer, can have a very real effect on the physical world, which brings me to the side note of the childhood playground saying of sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. That's a giant load of rubbish. Words can absolutely hurt, as we will continue to see in this source sheet. So we've gone through 2 sources so far. I've yapped for a little bit. Does anybody have any comments or questions to these first 2? No? Okay, cool. Joey, again.
Well, in the words, once you say something, it's out there forever.
Mm-hmm.
Whether on the internet or in real life, you can't take it back.
Exactly.
Like that parable of the rabbi told a man to tear open his pillow and scatter the feathers everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
He couldn't get them all back. And that teaches a valuable lesson that you can't take back something you say. Once it's out there, it's out there.
Exactly. And thank you for saying that. We will come back to that because we actually do see that play out in this week's Parsha. So who wants to read the third source, preferably in the English because it's kind of chunky? Okay.
We're going to Brian.
No, she was going to read.
Oh, you're going to read it?
She was going to read. I don't know her name. No, the woman in the red. What's her name, ma'am?
You want back? Which part you want to read?
Yeah. What's your name?
Esther.
Esther.
Okay, our sages said there are 3 sins for which retribution is exacted from a person in his world, and for which he is nonetheless denied a portion of the world to come: idol worship, forbidden sexual relations, and murder. Lashon hara is equivalent to all of them. Our sages also said, anyone who speaks Lashon hara is like one who denies God, as those who said, with our tongues we will prevail. Our lips are our own. Who is Lord over us? In addition, they said, Lashon hara kills 3 people: the one who speaks it, the one who listens to it, and the one about whom it is spoken. The one who listens to it suffers more than the one who speaks it.
Thank you. So that sounds all fairly grim. The Hebrew is not much nicer. But it also speaks, pun absolutely intended, to the very real consequences of our speech. And I find it really interesting that it's at the very end. It says, Lashon hara kills the 3 people: the one who speaks it, the one who listens to it, and the one about whom it is spoken. And the one who listens to it suffers more than the one who speaks it. Anybody have any thoughts about that part before I... Yes, Brian, who needs the mic.
At first glance, that seems rather interesting, but with a little bit of thought, I think it makes quite a bit of sense. The person about whom Lashon hara is spoken obviously suffers because they've had Lashon hara spoken about them, and the one who speaks it obviously suffers because maybe they're frustrated with this person, so they start gossiping, and that's just the outward manifestation of this inner frustration, and the person speaking knows better but is just gossiping. The person who hears it, though, is now going to go forward and tell essentially a lie to everyone else about person C, the person about whom Lashon hara was spoken. So if anybody else if the listener, who's now the repeater of this Lashon hara, if any of the people he repeated it to should encounter the person about whom Lashon hara was spoken, they're going to have a different impression, which may or may not be true. Mm-hmm. So you cause quite a lot of damage just by listening, even inadvertently, to Lashon hara.
And also to bounce off that, because we are going to see this in our next source, which is from from the Parsha that we just read, although it's later than what we read, I'm pretty sure. The person who hears the Lashon Hara, they could have a good relationship with the person about whom it is being spoken, so they could become upset or offended on that person's behalf, right? Which is what we see in our very next source, where Miriam and Aaron are speaking against Moses because of his wife. Now, the Hebrew uses the word kushite, and it remains untranslated. Kush is seen as like nowadays, if I remember the geographic distribution, as like North Africa. So the implication is that Moses' wife, Zipporah, is of darker skin, like probably a black woman, or what we would now, or someone we would now refer to as a black woman. And they are clearly upset and frustrated because they're both older than Moses, but he, being the younger one, is somehow in charge. And what's really interesting here, in the second verse, is that it says, Vigam banu tiber vayishma Hashem. Oh, wait, no. It was the last part, Vayishma Hashem. So they're chatting amongst themselves. They're saying these really terrible things. But Moses is not around to hear it. As far as we can tell, just based off the plain meaning of the text, there's nobody else physically around them. It's just the two of them snipping at each other, or airing their grievances with one another, as siblings are wont to do. But Hashem is around. And not only is Hashem around, Hashem is the one who hears it and gets really upset. Now, you could argue that Hashem could have just been like, okay, this was said, don't need to call attention to it, Moses has never heard it. But Hashem does talk about it. Like, he summons the three of them. He summons the two who were speaking the Lashon Hara and the person about whom it was being spoken. So now you have these, it's really four people, but let's just combine Miriam and Aaron in this for a second. The three people that are listed in the previous source, from the Mishnah Torah, the one who spoke it, or the people who spoke it, Aaron and Miriam. The one who listens to it or heard it was Hashem. And then the one about whom it was spoken was Moses. They're all called together in this. But this time, the one who listens to it is the one calling out the people who spoke this terrible, terrible stuff, right? Which is another potential outcome. When something bad is being spoken about another person, we as individuals do have the power to use our speech and be like, hey, that's not cool, shut your gob. If you're being really coarse about it, or you could just be like, hey, let's not do that, let's nip this in the bud. Hashem is not nipping this in the bud, or not as easily as I think one would like it to be. Instead, Hashem is drawing attention and making it clear to them that what they have said is not cool. So before I go on to our next source, I know that Brian had something to say about this.
Oh, I mean, I did have a little piece about this. Just the nature of the punishment was what I was going to comment on. Does it say?
It's in the next source, actually.
Okay,
I made them separate sources because I wanted to set the stage with
Great. It is a comment about the next source.
Yeah.
But if I did have one last comment about the whole Lashon Hara thing, it also becomes a game of telephone. If I repeat Lashon Hara to somebody, then that listener is then going to go and say something probably slightly different and slightly different and slightly different, so we'll get further and further away from truth. Even if the quote-unquote bad thing that I said about somebody was true, I have no guarantee that somebody else is going to repeat everything as carefully worded as I might have said it.
There's a saying, I might butcher this because English is not my first language, like a lie goes around the world halfway before truth puts its pants on, or something like that, which speaks to the whole telephone thing, right? If it's one thing, it's still not great, but it's one thing for Miriam and Aaron to say this in an enclosed space between themselves and with Hashem kind of hanging around. It's a whole nother thing if they were in a crowd, if they were like in the market, surrounded by all of the other Israelites who look up to Moses. You know, we see this in the episode of Korach, where he's not really speaking Lashon Hara. He's just being a jerk and thinking he knows more and is jealous and all of that stuff. But Korach's episode is so bad because his speech is so public that he draws in other people who join his little rebellion, and thus they all get eaten by the earth. So the comments that they have made about Moses' wife, that Miriam and Aaron have made about Moses' wife, don't really get a chance to spread. But the potential that they could have spread is something that for me personally, always like lingers in the back of my mind when I read this parsha, because we don't know if other people felt the same way about Tzipporah, or could this speech have inspired them to view her in a different light. So, with that note, we are going to jump to the next source, which is literally the next verse. Who wants to read it?
So it's number 12,
12:10.
Okay. So, 12:10.
She might need to flip the page. There we go. There we go.
As the cloud withdrew from the tent, there was Miriam, stricken with snow-white scales. Then Aaron turned towards Miriam. He saw that he was stricken with scales.
Thank you. So I have a very different soapbox that if I had more time I would get on, about how really both of them should have gotten afflicted, not just Miriam. It's really unfair, kind of sexist. Not going to go there tonight. But I want to focus on the the snow white scales. Here it's set in the Hebrew. It's mitzarat keshelek, literally like a scaly affliction like snow. If you were here when I was teaching for Tezria Metzora, I did a whole spiel about this is really just a continuation of that. But our ancestors didn't have the same understanding of medicine that we have today. What they saw with their eyes is what they got, so they had to come up with reasons why. And the understanding that our sages had for something like tsarat, like a skin affliction, something that we often translate as leprosy, was you got this because you were speaking poorly about someone, right? That's also why, like, dwellings could also become afflicted with rot. The assumption that would be made is that you were speaking badly about someone and now your house is rotting around you. So we see it in the next source where it was really me just trying to make that connection between speech and the leprosy, tsarat, however we translate that word. Because, when a person has a scaly affliction, it shall be reported to the priest, which in a weird way kind of is what happened in our previous source, because Aaron turned towards Miriam. He is like the head honcho priest, which And he saw that she was stricken with this tsarat, with this leprosy, skin, really bad affliction. So he kind of carried out what was dictated in Torah. But it's still, like, they both spoke poorly. Miriam is the one who got afflicted. And it, like, the rabbis kind of use this as proof. I also think they riff off the fact that Metzora has a mem, and they connect that with Miriam, if my memory serves me correctly, as to like as to why speaking poorly about someone, the consequences that you get are leprosy or tsarat, or however we translate that. So, any questions thus far? Yes, Brian. Questions, comments?
I think the punishment of Metzora is quite interesting in the context of Lashon Hara. There is an idea called midah keneged midah, literally measure for measure. That which you do to someone else will happen to you. You see this sort of, you can also think of this as karma, although that's not quite the same concept, but it's a similar concept of what goes around comes around. In this case, Miriam made a comment about Zipporah's color, her skin color. And if we remember Abraham as coming from the Ur of the Chaldeans, that means that most of the Hebrews would have been, at least genetically, what we would call Iraqi, in other words, non-white. So she is losing her color, whatever shade of skin her Miriam's skin color must have been. So there's this idea of what's going on, not literally what's going around, coming around. Her Lashon Hara was about color, and now she is losing the color in her skin.
I want to jump off that, not the skin color thing, but the midah neged midah. Thank you. I need more coffee, clearly. So Lashon Hara, and I'm going to be bouncing between this source and also our next one, which I only have in the English, which talks about, our next source talks about how speech, like malicious speech, can kill a person. And tsarat, when someone is afflicted with this skin affliction, they are exiled from camp, right? It is a form of social death. And it's not like, in the modern period of today where there are still leper colonies, not here in America, but in other countries. But if you have leprosy in other countries, you go and live in these leper colonies, right? There are other people with leprosy. You have your own community. You still have some social interaction, some social networking, some social status, right? But in the time of our ancestors, in the time of Torah, we didn't have that. Rashi has a comment that takes place in Tazria Metzora about the procedure where someone would be separated from camp. It's like every individual person was by themselves. Nobody interacted with them. Nobody talked to them. If they were declared unclean, they had to dress in a certain way. They had to cover their mouth in a certain way and declare their status to people so that they would move away and not interact with them. Now, we understand that through our modern knowledge of medicine to be like a measure of quarantine, but if anybody remembers the battle days of the early COVID period where, we were quarantining in our houses, if you are isolating by yourself, that's really, really hard and can also be like kind of mentally damaging if it goes on for too long, which is also why solitary confinement is considered a form of torture. But if you are quarantining with a group of people, it still sucks, but at least you can talk to another person. You're not talking to the walls, you're not talking to rocks or trees or anything like that. So after Miriam is afflicted with her leprosy, tsarat, whatever, they don't leave her, right? She is still separated from the camp. She is by all her lonesome. But the camp waits for her to rejoin them, which I think is quite nice of them. But also, like, she's the reason they found water, so if they left without her, they'd be kind of toast. But during that 7-day period, you know, we don't know if anybody was, like, shouting at her from her little wherever she was stationed while she waited for this to clear up, or if they just avoided her completely because, you know, when Moses pleads for Hashem to fix Miriam and cure her, Hashem is like, well, she's essentially shamed her father, so no. So, like, socially, she's dead until she's able to be brought back into camp. I think I'm running out of time. Joey, how long is it going to take you to do Ma'ariv?
Probably 20 minutes max.
Okay, I think I'm out of time. So, any final comments or questions? Oh.
Why is Aaron the Teflon man?
That is a great question. So the question was, why is Aaron the Teflon man? Personally, I think it is because he is the Kohen Gadol, and if he is afflicted with any kind of skin, any kind of impurity, he can't carry out his duties as the high priest. But
So why doesn't his various sins, which are recounted, why don't they just disqualify him? Was there nobody else who could have done it at least as well, who didn't, you know, like make a golden calf and wasn't guilty of insulting Hashem and by denigrating Moses, etc., etc.? I mean, there were people who did not, you know, side with Korach, etc. So why is he such a Teflon man?
I mean, again, it comes back to his status. Also, his successor hadn't been appointed yet. And I've always kind of thought of it as Aaron is still the eldest son. And although Torah, by and large, does not see the eldest sons end up on top, this might have been the rare concession from Hashem in that regard.
You've been listening to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. If you enjoy these podcasts, we invite you to write a review on the Apple Podcast website or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information on Temple Beth Am, Los Angeles, please visit www.tbala.org.